struggle for women's freedom really, as I said, has no borders. We must therefore ensure that as we deal with it, we support women in various places.
We fought to banish the past laws. Yet today our women are prisoners in their own homes.
We say we've gotten to a point where we appreciate women in leadership and sports and things like that, but you still see them being underpaid, you still see them not being appreciated.
We are able to stand on our own feet. We are able to open our businesses independently.
Currently, I do not believe that women have equal opportunity.
Lately, there's a lot of empowerment regarding women in the workplace. So far, South Africa is getting somewhere.
70 years since women, over 20,000 of them, marched to the union buildings against past laws they wanted to be free. But to what extent are the women of South Africa free today? It's Topical starts right now. A very good evening to you, South Africa, and those watching around the world. My name is Jyane, in for Blaine Herman. This is It's Topical. I'm not alone. Our guests are here. Dr. Khosi, Jyane, Advocate Brenda, Madumise-Paibo, and Professor Hlengiwe Ndlovu. We'll chat to them in a short while. And today, of course, South Africa marking 70 years since over 20,000 women marched to the union buildings, denouncing the oppressive past laws of the apartheid regime. Among them, Lilian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Rahima, Moosa, Sophia, Williams, Bruyn were among, of course, those who were chanting Wathint Abafazi, Wathint Imbokodo. Today, women in this country have taken steps towards building a country they want, but in the face of skyrocketing numbers of gender-based violence, economic disparities, societal expectations, among others, where are we in the fight for a better South Africa for women? And this leads to our question tonight, where we are asking you, to what extent are women in South Africa truly free, and what progress has been achieved during the democratic era? So do share your thoughts with us at SABC News on Facebook. And also, of course, remember, we're opening up our lines at around the bottom of the hour. You can call us 011-714-067778 or 79. Those numbers again, 011-714-067778 or 79. In fact, we'll get to hear from you at around 7:30. Perspective coming up. And this, of course, is around the backdrop of women in South Africa who are struggling with the multiple crises. We talk about women who are facing gender-based violence, women who are not even free to walk the streets of South Africa. We even talk about women who get killed on a daily basis. But let's paint a picture for you of how bad it truly is. All right, to the magic wall now, where we'll look at some statistics and see what they say about where the country is in relation to the progress that has been made in the fight for women. Women's rights since 1994. You can see that a number of things, right, are ticking the boxes. 18th global ranking for gender equality. This is, of course, according to the Economic Participation and Opportunity, Educational Attainment, Health and Survival and Political Empowerment. And this is a report that was done, of course, looking at just how far we are as a country. Then around 43.5 female MPs. This is around 2024. Greater representation in leadership and strong legal protection. And some will argue, what does it mean if access to justice is not truly equal? We have the first female Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya, and of course you also have the progressive constitution. And others, of course, do say, how far does it go to protect the rights of women in this country? Then you look at an even more bleaker picture, and this is around this particular statistic very, very disturbing. Around 36.4% unemployment rate among women. And in a country like ours, where we see the face of poverty is still a black woman, that still hasn't changed. So you can only imagine how many of them make up this particular number. Then you see young women who are not in employment, who are not in any form of economic participation, around 39.2%. Rural women on grants, 47.2%. When you look at this particular statistic, you ask yourself, how many of these women are being denied the right or even a funding to be able to start businesses? And then, very disturbingly, this is where we are and finding ourselves, around 7 women per day. Let this sink in. 7 women per day of women in this country being killed. And these are the numbers as 2024. 1.5 million experiencing physical or sexual violence. What does this mean in a country that says it is serious about the fight for women, about making sure that women are finding themselves safer, with more opportunities, women who find themselves in a country where they can walk to wherever they want to at any time of day? If we are seeing these numbers, we'll talk about what needs to change in just a moment. All right, as we continue then to bring you more of what happened today. Remember, 70 years since that 1956 march. So President Cyril Ramaphosa delivering the keynote address of the National Women's Day commemoration event at the Union Buildings. It marked 70 years since 1956 march to the same venue. Just important to mark that, the same venue, the Union Buildings, they were marching against apartheid past laws. And this is what the president and one of the leaders of the historic march, Sophia de Bruyn, had to say.
We fought to banish the past laws. Yet today our women are prisoners in their own homes. Gender-based violence continues to cast a dark cloud on our society. And every single day I weep for the girl child, the daughters, the mothers, and grandmothers who are abused, violated, and silenced. This is not the freedom we march for. We fought to dismantle the yokes of the systemic oppression of women as a race, class, and gender. Yet today we feel the cruel suffocation of entrenched poverty, lack of clean drinking water, homelessness, and systemic corruption.
The struggle for women's freedom really, as I said, has no borders. We must therefore ensure that as we deal with it, we support women in various places on our continent and globally as well. So in the end, this day must be a day of real empowerment for the women of our country. And as a government, we must continue to say and to promise to the women of our country, yes, we will ensure that South Africa continues to respect your rights. We will continue to uphold your rights as women, and we will foster equality between men and women.
On our regular Word on the Street feature, we took to various streets of Johannesburg seeking diverse insights as well as perspectives on this topic. And this is what people had to say. Watch.
I don't think we can say that women have equal opportunities, especially right now. It actually feels even worse. We say we've gotten to a point where we appreciate women in leadership in sports and things like that, but you still see them being underpaid, you still see them not being appreciated.
I still don't feel like we're being represented enough. you know, because in some spaces, in some work fields, you can feel the disparity. You can tell that there's more men. You can tell that men are more glorified in that space than women. And then when you look at where this stems from, even in a university setting, while you're doing a course with other men, they'll still make it seem as though you don't deserve to be there, you know. But I think in other fields, in other aspects, we're trying, but there's still more we can do.
We are able to stand on our own feet. We are able to open our businesses independently, and we are also able to divest in other things that men were only suitable for men.
According to government legislation and what we have with BBBE regulations, I think women are properly represented because we do have a pillar under your BBBE that looks after your management control and ownership, where a portion of employees of a specific company, more than 50% of the demographic needs to be female, right? And at the place that we are currently in, we're in Senton, there's a lot of JSE listed companies that are actually aligning with those regulations. So from my perspective, from a corporate perspective, I really do feel like women are properly represented.
Currently, I do not believe that women have equal opportunity, but I do see a current upliftment of women that is currently happening.
I think things have changed a little bit, but politically I think we still need women to be more involved politically wise to run our country. Business wise, women have really stood up to do things on their own. In the work business as well, there's a little bit of shortage, but lately there's a lot of empowerment regarding women in the workplace. So far, South Africa is getting somewhere.
So is it about meaningful participation of women when it comes to economic inclusion, or is it tokenism? I hear some of our viewers are talking about BBBE and the laws and how they make it impossible for some of the companies to function without getting women at the table. But are they at the table to represent the numbers they need, or are they at the table to meaningfully participate? We'll talk about that with my guests in just a moment. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. The question we're asking you is to what extent are South African women truly free, and what progress has been achieved during the democratic era? So do share your thoughts with us at SABC News on Facebook. Also remember, we're opening up our lines. Call us 011-714-0677, 78 or 79. Those numbers again, 011-714-0677, 78 or 79. We'll get to hear from you at around 7:30, and that's the bottom of the hour. All right, let's talk about this particular issue and look at to what extent are women in this country free. We welcome our panelists, Dr. Khosi, Jyane, clinical psychologist. We also have advocate Brenda, Madumise-Paibo, a lawyer and gender activist, and also the former chairman of Business Unity South Africa. And lastly, we have Professor Hlengiwe Ndlovu, the Deputy Director, Special Initiatives and Partnerships at the Centre on African Philanthropy and Social Investment at the Wits Business School. Good evening to you all. Do we say Happy Women's Day? I know that some have said that, some haven't, and others say don't say that. What do we say on a day like today? Prof, is it Happy Women's Day?
Well, I don't think so, because it's an old song. Every day, every year, this time of the year, we now get an invite to come and talk about how far women came. And this is after 3 decades of the quote-unquote democracy of which the women have never, tested. We don't take for granted, of course, the experiences of the women who marched in 1956. They gave us the language, they gave us the repertoires, they also gave us the vocabulary that we're using today to fight some of these things. But is it a Happy Women's Day? I don't think so.
Advocate? Is it a Happy Women's Day?
No, it's not happy for me. If I have to deal with a woman who is sitting at the Morningside police station because she is being accused by her husband for domestic violence because he shut the door against his finger. So she has to sleep at the Morningside police station for 3 days. They'll only attend to her on Tuesday and apply for police bail. So it's nothing happy because I had to deal with that yesterday. And so if those of us who are privileged enough to have had the opportunity to be out there, many others couldn't be out there. That's where I am.
Doc?
You know, my grandmother always, even on Christmas Day, would say, what have they got to be happy about? I guess that's the question that we need to ask. And maybe it's just a linguistic convention to just say happy and allow us to forget when we are actually supposed to remember.
Yeah. And, you know, I want us to start on that point of forgetting when we must remember. Because you have a number of people who say, but why do we still need to go back to 1956? Why do we still need to talk about 1956? We're in 2026. It's a different struggle. But when you look at it, it may have changed shape or form or time. But is it really different?
I think that's a very fair question. And I think it's a double-edged question in that we ought to ask, what are they free from, right? And they are free from a number of things, you know, the legislative architecture, the political constraints that the women of 1956 were living under at the time. And yet the more potent question is, what are they free to be and do? And those are the more pressing questions. And I think some of what you are putting out on screen puts in our faces the very questions that we need to interrogate about what the freedom actually means and how much work there still is. And I think the 1956, as Prof aptly said, they gave us the language. They reminded us of our agency as women. And they made it known that the struggle predates democracy and there are continuities, which is why we're sitting here today and still having this conversation, because if we had arrived, why would we be sitting here?
And Advocate, today, there was that national event where, you know, women had to gather, talk about taking stock, speak about where they find themselves today. And interestingly enough, I was listening to Ms. Sophia, and she said a number of things. And she said, I'm speaking on behalf of the over 22,000 women who marched then. I wear a smile of pride of how far we've come, but at the same time, she expresses her pain. And she ends off by saying to the leadership, grow a moral compass and a backbone. And she then paints a picture of poverty wearing a black face. When we have these commemorative events, does it hit the note? And does it really make us as a country really take stock?
I think the difficulty that I have with my country is it's a very performative country, right? And it placates most of us into, and it lulls us into a false sense of security and safety, right? Because we have had the words being said that makes us feel very good and comfortable, right? So the president spoke today and you all feel like something is being done or is going to be done, right? And we get out of that and we are faced with our daily struggles and it's a grind, right? And we are told there is hope and the opportunities are there. It's easy to approach any department you'll be attended to, right? But the reality of myself and my colleagues sitting around on this platform and yourself and many others, that's not the case, right? So when I walk into a police station and I'm met with aggression and I'm met with disdain, that's my lived experience as a woman in this country. When I have a prosecutor who's not listening to what I have to say about my case and meets me on the day of my case being heard, that's a crisis for me, that you are not listening. And this equality that is in the Constitution, that is in every legislation that we talk about, is not real. Because that's how I'm treated, right? When I have a magistrate who has to scream at me and shout, in a court, when I have a judge who has to behave like that and not even understand the language or the law that he has to is supposed to apply and interpret, right? That's the reality of many of us. When I have a Director General of a department who is tone deaf about why the transport system is what it is and how it places women in fear, right? And in your design and your planning, you're not factoring all of that. You're not factoring what it does to women not to have access to electricity and have this load reduction, water shortages, literally in infrastructure that is breaking down. And you don't take a gender lens on it and you think it's just as good as it's supposed to, because we have to accept it. Because we will make the decision. We'll talk again on Heritage Day and say happy heritage, because we have had so many women in the arts, in the heritage. We will talk about it again next year on the International Women's Day, about the progress that we've made, and we have not looked honestly to, when we talk about this equality, what does it look like?
And Prof, right on that point, the gender lens. When we speak about the unemployment numbers, we say X number of people are unemployed in the country. And we then say, Stats will go further and talk about black women that are being impacted. But we hardly drill down on these statistics and look at what they mean on a daily basis, because being unemployed comes with a whole lot of indignity and dehumanization.
Absolutely, Boniwe. It's the everyday struggles that Advocate Madumise was talking about, to say these are the lived experiences of the people on the ground, and when we make them statistics, we're just counting numbers, but we don't necessarily, go down to feel what does it feel like. So I'm reflecting on the statistics that you were looking at when you started the show. And I'm looking at how far even we've regressed, even in terms of women's representation. So we're talking about people in the communities, and you are asking the question, how far, or how serious it is when you're looking at the communities. If I, myself as a professor, I have to deal with, the same unequal opportunities. We're looking at the numbers even within the National Assembly. We have regressed. We came from 2014, we went a little up, and then 2019, and then we've dipped again. Out of the 400 seats at the National Assembly, only 179 of them approximately are reserved for women. Women, we still do the care work that we've always been doing. We come here to SABC, we do the same care work. We come here to talk about women. The time we were called during COVID-19, we were to talk about how are people faring at the homes, how are we, balancing things in terms of water and the everyday things. When we come here now during the crisis, we do, even we dissect care work. We're coming to talk about how is the Strait of Hormuz affecting households. But we never come here to talk about economics, big economic numbers. We never come here to project statistics in terms of how, even the Reserve Bank is supposed to perform, or meet the challenges. These are topics that are reserved for men, and particularly white men, if you ask me. So how do we then talk about progress when even women like ourselves sitting here, we have the privilege to sit here, are still talking the same language of exclusion, lack of representation? When do we arrive, at the communities and really understand their struggles? I mean, it's so sad. It's a sad reality that we have to confront. And if you ask us, are we free? The struggle continues. It changes the face. It changes the dress.
And after the break, I want us to delve deeper into then what becomes the impact of this on the psyche of the nation, on the psyche of women, because we often talk about the word trauma. But what does it look like, and how is it beginning to express itself, especially, Prof, in light of what you're saying, when you talk about women and care work, it's not even factored in when a woman is called in for a job interview.
No.
To say you're going to perform the job, but there's still a lot more that you can do. So after the break, we'll talk about all of this and more. And just a reminder to you, the viewers, we are going to open up the lines at around the bottom of the hour. So we'll take your calls as well. 011 714 0677 7879. Those numbers again, 011 714 0677 7879. And I'm keen to hear from you on what do you make of where we find ourselves? To what extent are the women in South Africa free? If we're still talking about women, for example, today, women in Langa were killed. What does all of that mean? We'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back to It's Topical. Today we're discussing women and their place in the South African society. So before I continue with my guests, we've got Kiara from Fourways in Johannesburg. Good evening to you, Kiara.
Good afternoon to everyone listening in.
Good evening, Kiara. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
So I think something that's very important to touch on is the mindset of people. It's 2026 and we still hear comments suggesting inferiority of women, whether it's within social circles, friend groups, places of worship, amongst colleagues, and women for them.
All right, Kiara, your line is letting us down somewhat, but we did get the gist of what you've had to say. You speak about the inferiority of women. That's Kiara there from Fourways in Johannesburg. I'll take some of your calls in just a moment. But, Doc, I want to come back to you because we talk about the issue of trauma, but we've never really unpacked how it's showing itself in society today. Because sometimes people think, but surely you would have been over the trauma by now because apartheid is gone. We are in a free South Africa. So what does trauma look like now and how does it show itself?
Look, I think the classic definition of trauma is any adverse event that we experience, the magnitude of which is that it shakes the very foundations on which or around which our world and our lives are organized, and it makes them never the same again. And I think if we look at the reality of not just individual but collective trauma, in terms of the oppressive trinity, you know, slavery, colonization, and apartheid, the after effects continue to reverberate. And a fitting analogy, you know, that we'll often hear is that the music continues long after the song has stopped playing. And it is exactly that. And the survival instinct in human beings is that we find ways in which we have to position ourselves in order to adjust to as ways and forms of survival. We will contort ourselves in many different ways, depending on situations and options available at the time. The challenge, if we look at how we have had to contort ourselves in relation to apartheid, for example, and the transition, the legislative and political transition ushered in by 1994, the realities that are still carried over in many ways. They did not stop when we raised that flag and flew those wonderful planes and the colors. They did not stop. And so there are continuities and psychological continuities, which are those adaptations. And if we look at things like, for example, I mean, you know, the clip that you played talked about the fact that when they marched in 1956, you know, they spoke about Wathint Abafazi, Wathint Imbokodo. And that is even that is a language that we use, that we borrow, that we carry, but that's also weaponized against us as women. Because why should we be Imbokodo? Why is it not enough to just be women?
Yeah.
And so we are made to feel inadequate when you can't bear the load, because this is what defines a woman. And we look at that from a socio-political space, but we also look at it from a socio-cultural space where you will be told, umfazi uyanyamezela. You know, and it is these language and these constructs and this consciousness that gets transmitted transgenerationally in our families and in our communities. Yeah. She spoke about religion. That's one of the centers in which the and it's not inferiority of women. It's more the inferiorization of women. None of us are born inferior. We are made socially inferiorated. None of us are.
I want to take Nomathemba from Johannesburg. Nomathemba, good evening to you.
Good evening, Lungela. Good evening to your viewers as well. All right, please go ahead. All right. From my perspective, since 1994, there has been significant focus in the advancement of women's rights. Although there has been a very slow pace of gender transformation, we acknowledge that the Constitution itself speaks of progressive realization. Women are now gradually occupying leadership positions and positions that were historically occupied by men. There are more women in the mining industry, in the engineering sector, in tech, in law, in politics, and various other sectors. More women now have a seat at the table. However, there are various existing barriers that prevent women from thriving in these positions. Barriers such as unpaid care work, childcare, access to justice, lack of gender mainstreaming, sexual harassment, and generally conditions which are not conducive for women. Mm-hmm. With regards to whether women are truly free, I personally feel different times come with different struggles. All right, thank you. We have major societal and environmental issues that hinder our autonomy, our life, our dignity. All right. Yes.
Thank you very much, Nomathemba. Thank you. Thank you. My apologies. Thank you very much. I just want to take as many callers as we can before we continue with the conversation. That's Nomathemba in Johannesburg. We'll also take Sizwe from Delmas in just a moment. We're trying to get Sizwe back. We just seem to be having a problem with his line there. Sizwe, if you can, from Delmas, please do call us. Advocate, Nomathemba paints a picture of the strides that have been made. We can't deny them. We do have women who are in leadership positions and all of that. But I suppose the question also will then come to say, they're there, but are they shaping the discourse?
Yeah, but it can't be left entirely on them to shape the discourse, right? So when we talk gender, we're not just talking about women, we're talking about everybody. Everyone has got a stake in making this country and beyond successful, right? So let's talk about how these gender roles, attitudes, opportunities have been embedded for centuries, because that's what we're talking about, right? Why would you give up a privilege that has given you power, control, and dominion over others for so many years, right? So we are okay to say we've got a constitution that gives the right to women, that gives the right to LGBTQI communities or individuals. We agree that we cannot discriminate on the basis of sex, religion, gender, age, sexual orientation, and all of that. However, every day, the things that we do go against all of that, right? So you have to, at the workplace, so your last caller, who spoke about advances that we have made and that there are barriers. Why do we have those barriers for women? And we have been talking about those barriers for the last 70 years, right? That we spoke about childcare, that if I make the choice as a woman that I want to get into the workspace, right? And I want to stay in that workplace, but I have something that I'm not in control over, that I fall pregnant, I have a child, but there has to be provision for childcare in my workspace, right? And we've been fighting for that. So why is corporate South Africa till today not done all of that, right? To make sure that you bring in as many women into the workspace as we can, right? But we're still talking about making sure that happens. Why do we have sexual harassment in the numbers that we have in the workplace, right? And we have a convention that talks about harassment and no violence in the workplace. Why do we have to have policies to ensure that we are okay in this environment? So we are not talking about the behavior that has enabled all of these things to come about. And we're literally ignoring all of that because we are doing patchwork, right? So let's have a constitution, let's have laws that will address some of these issues, but we have not delved deep into the behavior of our male counterparts that drive us as society to come to the conclusion that we need something to ensure that I can live, I can survive in this environment, right? So we have to talk about that, and we haven't done that justice to that discussion, because once we want to have that conversation, what are we met with? We met with violence. We're met with violence, right? Because you are saying something that is, I think, as a man where I'm sitting, you are taking something away from me.
Advocate, hold on a second. I want to take Pina from Johannesburg. Good evening to you. Please go ahead before we go for the break.
Good evening to you and to your panel. And I just want to say that I feel like, can we really still say Happy Women's Day today when women are still not free? When we still have to walk with tasers or pepper spray just to feel safe. When the president is talking about declaring gender-based violence as a national crisis, yet women continue to live with fear. I feel like we are still fighting for our voices to be heard. We are still fighting for seats at the table and chairs in the boardroom. We are still fighting for equal opportunities, equal pay, dignity, safety, and respect. So yes, we can commemorate Women's Day, but let's not pretend the fight is over until women are truly safe, free, equal, and empowered. There's still work to be done. That's how I feel. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. And we'll quickly take a break. But when we come back, I want us to talk about this parity. We often hear this word, parity, gender parity. What does it look like? And are we really ready to have this conversation of gender parity? Because at times, like Advocate Madumise is saying, when you bring up that word, when you bring up certain words, the table gets uncomfortable. Let's talk about that in just a moment. All right, as we continue with this conversation, Prof, I'm going to come to you because we talk about the table getting uncomfortable, and especially when it comes to issues of, you'll hear people throw around gender parity, women must be paid equally to their male counterparts and all of that. But when that conversation does come up, it seems that it unsettles a lot of things at the table. What needs to change for us to be able to have this conversation meaningfully, and in order to be able to say that next year, like Advocate was saying, we don't find ourselves coming back here to say strides have been made. How far are we? What's happening?
Absolutely, Bonniwe. One thing, patriarchy must die before women are resurrected, or before we even address gender parity. Because patriarchy is so daring, so much that it learns the language of activism. It gets called out, whether through policies and whatsoever, but it mutates itself. You know that virus that keeps on mutating. That's patriarchy for you.
Sounds like COVID-19.
Exactly.
I just had to go back to the number of viruses.
That's what patriarchy does. So when you're talking about the table, gender parity, and what is supposed to change, first, the mindset has to change. Because as we are having this conversation right now, you are having, I can't remember the Afrikaans word that used to be, the fear, that fear. Yeah, exactly, that word. So there is already a fear that women are coming up to take up space, to take up what, to take up what. And, for crying out loud, someone believes that for women who marched 70 years ago, we're still fighting those struggles today. That even predates them. How are we even going to take up your space? And I think that's what Advocate Madumise was talking about, to say, we are talking about these things, but also at the same time, who is anti-progress? Who is making these things not happening? And I always say, unless and until we have women money, that's when we're going to think about changing things.
Exactly.
But we can't
What does woman money look like?
That's what I'm going, that's where I was going to say, women money is when women are eventually controlling the economy. Now we are not even next year, the ANC will not deliver a woman president. This is a party that's more than a century in existence.
Yeah.
So if you're not even trusting women's leadership, you cannot even think about, gender parity because you see them as a threat. But also, it's not just a threat. It's about how you are benefiting from care labor. Exactly. From unpaid labor of the everyday. I was saying to my sister last year, this year I want to publish like a married man. Because, when you get to be subsidized by the unpaid labor and everything, that's when you are said to be performing, to be brilliant, to be breaking boundaries. Women never get that recognition whatsoever because they will always be seen for reproduction work, care work, and that's all we do. When we call these things out, we are told that we are angry, we are emotional, we hate men, we want to kill them, and this is all so problematic.
Doc, to this point, yesterday I was in a room with a young woman who said she had to go into activism because she contested at a tertiary institution to be president of an organization. But she was told, you are very good, but you're a woman. We can't put you as the president. You must be the deputy. What are we doing to young girls if this is how we're going to be treating them?
Well, we are continuing to do to them what we've done to their mothers, to their grandmothers, to their great-grandmothers. The room is littered, with a photo of women who were capable then, who are successors of women who were capable even before. But the same messaging continues. Maybe the language, the vocabulary changes, but it is as explicit now as it was then. And so if we're talking about the resilience of women, if we're talking about the fortitude of women, we have to ask ourselves, how big are these boulders that they need to be pushing? And I think that's what Prof is referring to, Magati, who's sustaining the system? Yeah. And how much longer do we always have to be pushing against the tide and pushing against the tide? When will it get to be that we are entitled simply by virtue of? Yeah. Just like male is the default setting. Yeah. When will it be that human is the default setting?
Advocate, I'm going to have to give you the final word here.
Wow.
That's how far time goes. And here I was thinking we still have 3 hours left.
I thought so too. I thought we still have another 15 minutes or so.
I thought we had 3 hours, in fact.
My goodness. I think we need to extend this program.
We need to.
Right? So maybe the powers that be these conversations cannot happen on the 9th of August, right? Must be continuous because that's how we're going to find each other. Because at the moment where we are talking at cross purposes as men and women, right? To the point being made by my fellow panelists is, listen, we are part of the human race as women. So we exist like any other human being exists in the world. A male person exists, we exist the same way. All that we're asking for is that know and acknowledge that existence. So a threat to your existence is that you acknowledge that I, no matter my gender, no matter my political affiliation, no matter my age, is that I exist. I'm human. That the same rights that you have must be accorded to me. I cannot be denied the right to breathe because I refuse to be in a relationship with you.
As you say, we need to have this conversation. I'm marking this because I'm definitely going to circle back to this one. But thank you so much for just how far we've gotten with this conversation. And thank you to you for watching and to our guests, Professor Hlengiwe Ndlovu, Advocate Brenda Madumise-Paibo, and Dr. Khosi Jyane. So here's my take. No doubt, strides have been made. We don't deny that. But that can't be the standard life. Change is needed this very minute. It can't be another day in South Africa when women are killed daily, when black women are the face of poverty, and women largely still get the raw end of the stick. Why is that we've normalized reporting on gender-based violence instead of demanding action? Women are not tokens to be put at the table to improve the gender parity scorecards. They need to participate meaningfully in the economy and also shape the discourse. The National Development Plan, for example, is clear. The empowerment of women is at the core of eliminating poverty, reducing inequality, and achieving sustainable national development. All this by year 2030, it says. So, was this just another plan put on paper? Or is it one that we can achieve? Whatever the answer, the status quo simply can no longer remain. And that is my take. So if you've missed anything, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on SABC Plus or YouTube. Glenn Herman is back with you next week. Take care.